Welcome to Business Spotlight. I'm Rob Andrew, and today I'm joined by Jon Malyon from We Are Tilt.
Oh yeah, how you doing?
Good morning, Jon.
Hi there, how you doing?
Very well, thank you. Jon, please tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, hi. My name's Jonathan Malyon, or Jon Malyon, and I'm the managing director at a company called We Are Tilt. In terms of what I do, I guess my job is to make sure the right people are in the right place at the right time, hopefully doing the right thing. If I get, all those things right, then I go home happy. And Tilt as a business, we're a digital creative agency that focuses on kind of changing behaviors, driving attitudinal change through digital innovation. So, we'll tell stories, create digital experiences that get people from, I guess, A to B. And we've been going for about little over 13 years now.
Okay. Jon, what is it you enjoy the most about what you do?
That's an interesting one. Are we talking about this particular moment in time, or my whole journey through Tilt? Because my career has evolved as Tilt has gone on. So
Tell me today's world. In today's world, tell us about
today's world as a managing director, I mean, it's an interesting one because as a business grows, you sort of slowly start coming off the tools, as it were, and you start managing people. And one of the key things about that is that you start to you have to is important, but you also start to have to I guess self-actualize through the successes of others, of your team. And actually that's something that I've found really I really enjoy, is when you sort of see your team working together in harmony on a project and they're really passionate about it, and actually then that project goes on to deliver the results that that was spoken about at kickoff, and then they're really proud and it's recognized by the client, it's recognized, etc. It's seeing the culmination of all that come together, and the team really proud of it. That's what I really enjoy, when you at the end of a project it's delivered and everyone's happy, client's happy, and the team are there buzzing. That's that special moment that I really enjoy, sort of observing and sort of going, yeah, that's cool. Enjoy that.
That's really good. That's really interesting. And Jon, so how many employees do you actually have at the moment at Tilt?
So we're 35 at last count.
Okay, 35. And what qualities do you look for in your employees?
So it's sorry, someone coming to the door. So what qualities look for? So I mean, it's ultimately there's obviously the kind of the technical skills that you need, depending on the various disciplines that you're joining. So obviously to create strategy, development, design, motion, or film, the various disciplines. So when we're employing someone, depending on the job, obviously they need to have the kind of various kind of skill sets to allow them to actually do the job. But one of the things that's really important to us is kind of the cultural fit. Do they have do they think in the right way? Do they have the right work ethic? And that's not that they come in and they're going to just work really, 9 to 5 and just work really hard. It's more about, do they actually care about what they're doing? That is the really important thing, and you can only really get that from speaking to someone. So generally our interview phase is like a 2-phase interview process, and the first part is we have a kind of an informal conversation with them, just to kind of get a sense for the type of person they are. And you can tell if someone's really invested in their kind of career and what they're doing very, very quickly, because people ooze that kind of passion and desire to do something. So it's that kind of, you're recruiting for culture, and the type of person that we look for is the type of person who's just generally kind of just loves what they do through and through. And you get that person right and you put them on the right project, and magic happens. So that's what we're after. It's kind of, recruit for culture, train for skills is the kind of mindset we're in.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's very much about that passion, values,
Yeah.
which are crucial.
Yeah.
Excellent. Jon, how does Tilt differ from your competitors? How do you stand out?
So I mean, I guess the traditional kind of space that we operate in, the space that we've kind of grown from, has been in learning. So we, for the past sort of 11 years, we've sort of made a bit of a name for ourselves by kind of going into big global corporates, and we work with them to help deliver learning experiences. That might be setting employees up for success, or that might be, developing employee capability, or that might just be telling kind of stories that drive changes in culture. And I guess the key thing that separated us, and still does to a degree, is that focus on outcomes. Really, it's not so. When we're working in the learning space, there's the word outcome is an interesting one. The traditional kind of like metric that comes top down is like, something gets commissioned and they want to see the X number of employees, for example, have gone through the process and their learner record has been updated with completed. And that's considered a key performance indicator. Like it's done. But that's not necessarily it. It's like, what is the actual behavior you're looking to change? And that's generally the kind of the bit that I guess separates us, is we really sort of focus in on trying to understand what is the thing that the client is actually trying to ask us. So they'll come to us with a brief. 9 times out of 10, that's not actually the brief that they're looking to answer, because we'll go through this kind of discover and define phase. And in that is like audience analysis, business analysis, and you'll really try and deep dive into the actual problem. And then the brief will normally kind of augment, and you'll end up with a kind of, this is actually what we want to create. Right, cool. Now we know what we want to create. Let's go ahead and kind of apply some creative and strategic thinking to how we create that, delivering on the actual outcomes that you want. So I think, a lot of businesses say that they're outcome focused. I'd like to say that we are, and we've got proof in that. And over the past sort of 5 years, we've started to really gain a lot of industry recognition through the awards that have sort of started to kind of flow in based on the outcomes that we're actually delivering. And then also, I guess that's backed up by the fact that it's we've grown organically through word of mouth. We haven't done a lot of aggressive marketing or new business. It's been a lot of we work to build strategic relationships with clients, deliver the results that we know they need to achieve, and then that works. Everyone's happy. They take us on to the next project, and then they might move laterally, or they might move into a different business. And so by fostering that relationship and having an obsessive focus on kind of outcomes and quality and creativity, you kind of build that kind of new business model organically. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
it does. That's fascinating, Jon, actually. And in terms, if I just take you back to that point, you said when you first sit down with a new client and you receive their brief, during that discovery session, how often is it that that brief changes?
Quite a lot, to be honest. And that's I mean, it's not just a discovery session, and sometimes that can take up to sort of 4 to 6 weeks, that whole process, because when you're working with companies at that scale, it takes time to kind of find the right people to have those conversations, to thread the needle of their diaries, and then to kind of speak to the audiences that you need to, and also understand I guess the art of the possible, what's technically possible within their infrastructure, how far can you push the boundaries, etc. Not for the sake of a fad, but for the sake of necessity. Like if we're going to actually change a behavior, what do we actually need to do? That's the first question you need to ask yourself. And then you go, can we actually do it within the kind of technological constraints of a company's infrastructure? And if the answer is maybe, you then have to have those technical conversations up front to understand how far down, how far you can push without rocking the boat too much. But yeah, it's in answer to your question, it normally is quite a lot, and that's what we try to push now is don't just come to us with a brief, come to us with a problem, and we'll work with you to firstly get to the brief and then get to a recommendation that actually answers that specific brief.
That makes perfect sense, actually. What's been your biggest learning as a business owner, Jon?
Been many. So I guess I wrote a few down actually earlier. So a few biggest learnings really is, one of them is early on when you're growing, there, I guess cash flow is probably a bit tighter, and you always try to, you think, oh, there's a task over here, I'm just going to do that alongside everything else. But ultimately, that is a bit of a sort of a misnomer in terms of economies, saved economies, etc. So I think someone once said to me, never try and save a wage by doing the job yourself. Because if you do that, it takes away your focus as an MD on trying to grow the business and fixing the problems that are arising, and having that kind of just, I guess, holistic strategic focus. If you try and kind of just go, okay, well, that thing's over there, I'll fill that hole for 6 months or a year, all of a sudden you're pulled straight back into the daily grind. Your focus is not where it needs to be. And so I think that's one of the most important things. The second thing as well, I think it's not necessarily a learning, it's kind of been something that's been omnipresent until all the way through, is don't chase the income. It's more chase the reason you're doing what you're doing, because then you're if you're doing that, like you believe in your product or your service, you're passionate, you've got purpose, that then flows through to your team, and they believe you and they'll follow you. And then if everyone is kind of oozing that kind of belief, that kind of flows into everything, and you deliver great work, and it's the great work that gets you the recommendations, that gets you the next job. If your focus is on basically just driving money into the door, you're going to create a very different culture, as to a company that's trying to create genuinely good things for people. I think they're kind of two key things, really.
Oh, they're excellent examples, John. Really, really appreciate that, and very clearly articulated.
Yeah. One last thing that springs to mind actually is something I was thinking about the other day is try to. I think it's important. This is something that I've fallen foul to. I think as a business owner, right, when you're growing, it just becomes all consuming. It becomes you, and it's very, very easy for that to become you, your personality, your identity. And then, so fine, that's great, because you're invested, you're all in. But the problem with that is you go so far down that rabbit hole that actually then when you start to have setbacks, you start to have, for example, people leaving, or something happens, or some X, Y, and Z negative in a negative space, it's very easy for you to attribute that to you as a fundamental failing of you, which isn't the case. Things happen in business. You have to accept failure, and you have to accept failure as a way to learn, as a way to kind of grow. And you go, okay, I recognize this thing has gone wrong. Let's kind of get into that and like critically analyze it, and to understand where the problems are and how we can kind of have that growth mindset and create change. The problem is if you are kind of if the line is blurred between you and your business too closely, you take that as a personal failing, and then emotion comes into it, and emotion blurs things sometimes, and it becomes quite hard to be objective in terms of what you're trying to achieve. So, hands up, I fell foul to that, and actually, it's actually through a little bit of reflection, I was like, okay, I need to create some kind of boundary and actually make sure that my identity is not 100% wedded to Tilt. It's over here as well. So I've got that sort of mental separation, and I can go, and if I've had a stressful day, I can go do this thing over here, and I'm completely de-stressed, and it takes my focus 100% away from the problems. Then you can come back renewed.
Easier said than done, I imagine.
Easier said than done. Yeah. And as I said, like I have, hands up, fallen fully into that trap, and it's only by going through it that I've realized, oh yeah, I actually need to kind of take that step back.
Thanks for sharing that, though. That's really helpful. John, what do you see as the main challenges for Tilt as you move forward?
Main challenges for Tilt moving forward. I'd say at the moment, I mean, the economy is obviously one at the moment. That's something that I think every business is feeling at the moment. Everything's just a bit tighter. We're living in I forget what the acronym stands for now, but a VUCA world is the acronym. I think it's something like volatile, uncertain. Just generally, all the rules of business as the past, decade have gone out the window. Where you could kind of predict things, it's just so uncertain now that you're having to kind of use a bit more hunching and your instincts, because everything's so volatile, everything's so changing, things are changing at pace. So that is one of the things that's taking a bit of getting used to. But on that kind of changing at pace thing, I mean, it's specific to the creative industries. Sorry, it's not just specific to the creative industries, but I will speak about it from my viewpoint, is obviously the biggest thing in the news. Not biggest thing, but one of the things in the news at the moment is obviously AI. Since OpenAI, ChatGPT, generative AI, all these different things have sort of come into mainstream field of vision and use. It is kind of a threat and it's an opportunity. It depends on the lens you look at it, really. It's a threat because there's no doubt that it's going to completely remodel the way that businesses operate, the tools we use, how we work, etc. But it's an opportunity if you embrace it. It's not. I'm not talking about what I mean by that is trying to understand how your teams can use the various tools that are out there to optimize what you do. So it's not about seeing AI as a replacement for people. It's seeing it saying, well, you've got your team members. How can you use it as an amplifier for ourselves, for what we do, for our ideas and our thoughts? If you can really sort of learn, it's important not to kind of ostrich, put your head in the sand here. It's about look at what's out there, look at what exists, and look at how you can potentially use these things to amplify your team. If you can do that, I think there's huge opportunities across the board. If you don't, I think there's huge threats to business coming. So there's going to be, within my network on LinkedIn, I see a lot of people talking about it and saying, well, how can we basically use this to kind of do X, Y, and Z? We within the creative space, there's a lot of generative AI tools now, like Midjourney or DALL-E or Stable Diffusion, things like voice. You can create voiceover artist stuff, and it's really interesting. But it's understanding how you can use it, its strengths, its weaknesses. If you don't, then other businesses will, and it will just completely flip things on its head. So, but I think it's important. It's about the human voice and how you can use the AI tools that are coming to amplify the kind of the essence of humanity, that kind of the creativity, the soul, the ideas that kind of flow out of us.
It's fascinating, John, and I'm just going to ask you a question back to what you were explaining to me earlier in terms of the culture at Tilt. How do you, those two paths that you just mentioned there, in terms of embracing AI either as a threat or as a opportunity, how do you encourage that into the culture? How do you embed that into the culture then of Tilt? That this the opportunity path that people are seeing rather than the threat.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's no doubt that, for example, within the team, we've got designers, we've got filmmakers, etc. And you can look at AI, the various tools that are there at the moment. You'd be like, "Oh, hang on a minute, that's a threat. It can create a kind of a logo, or it can create an image, or it can start to create animations and stuff. But it still needs the genesis of that idea, and it also needs creatives and designers to basically look at something critically and go, is that actually any good? So that's the first part. So what we've done is we introduced a whole load of what we call AI throwdowns about 18 months ago. And we've been doing them sort of every sort of 2 to 3 weeks, where because of the pace of change, something's changing, some new thing's been released. It's basically bringing the team together and going, right, let's look at this new thing. Let's look at what it can do, how we can use it, the pros and cons of it. And then we've set up a couple of channels on our sort of company Slack where we sort of share knowledge, etc. It's about just keeping it front and center of our mind. And then within our various departments, the heads of departments are sort of looking at what's being shared, and then they go, okay, cool, let's take this into the production process. Let's see if we can use it, for example. So, for example, how it's being used within the creative teams right now is, if you want to sort of storyboard something up quickly and give a client a quick understanding of what something might look like without spending hours and or maybe days kind of like designing something up, you can if you can prompt engineer it correctly, you can get a kind of a general feel for something quite quickly out, and you can go right to your client, which kind of these kind of paths do you want to go down. So it's no different to going on Google and saying, kind of trying to search for various different things that exist in Google to kind of pull a mood board together. You can do that, but you can do it a bit more specifically based on prompt requests. An example of how the development team are doing it, so for example, ChatGPT with the various plugins that you can get, it can be a really efficient debugging tool. For example, with I'm going to show my lack of dev knowledge now, but with like regex stuff, like if you're trying to sort of understand how to write a certain kind of, I guess, algorithm, or you want it just to check something, you can just copy that small snippet of code in, and then you can ask it to kind of run a quick check on it, find errors, just debug it, and then you can bring it back and pull it in. The bit that's really interesting, or we need to be very careful of, which I guess is an educational piece here, is there are instances of bigger companies with software engineers where they're taking like large chunks of code, pumping it into ChatGPT, and then basically doing the same thing, going, can you just find errors in this or fix this? But what they're effectively doing is taking the company IP, dumping it into ChatGPT, and when it goes in there, the moment you hit enter, ChatGPT, OpenAI own that. It's gone. So there's been some interesting kind of IP issues that have started to circulate there. So it's about, making sure that we use it. It's in the conversation we're not afraid of, what's there. But it's also kind of, as we come across these things in the news about, errors that are being made with the use of it, sharing that and building that into the processes.
It's exciting times. It certainly sounds it.
Yeah.
Jon, who or what inspires you at the moment?
Who inspires me at the moment? I mean, from a kind of a professional perspective, it's going to sound cheesy, but there's members of the team out there who you can just see are just so invested and just love what they do, and it's you can pose them one of the most challenging sort of knotty problems, and I see some of the briefs coming in from clients or the problems that are being solved, and it kind of turns me white with fear when I look at some of those. I'm like, how are we going to answer that? But it flows into the team, and you just see them just going through the motions, going through the steps, understanding it, and what comes out is amazing. Some of the ideas that come out that are tied to kind of real interesting kind of KPIs, etc., and actually some of the projects that are being delivered, it's just their minds. It really is generally inspirational, not just, I guess, from my team. It's just seeing what the kind of the up and coming generation are able to kind of think up with the tools they've got available. From a personal perspective, we've been pushing hard at the moment, going into trying to kind of build out our kind of B Corp offerings. We were B Corp registered a year ago. And then we've been driving our kind of net zero agenda internally. But I'm personally interested at the moment in terms of how we can use business as a force for good, how I can use Tilt as a force for good, helping work with global companies to kind of breathe life into their ESG strategies, in terms of communicating it externally and internally. And what's inspiring me at the moment is all of the, I guess, there's a huge surge of focus on that, and there's events like the Blue Earth Summit that are sort of coming into fruition, and things like Anthropy as well. There's a lot of events now that are being created that are focused on being used as a force for good, not just sharing knowledge around a particular skill set. And I really like that. So it's difficult to kind of speak to a particular person when there's so many being pulled together in these kind of events that are focused on creating a kind of a fairer future for everything in that space. So if for your listeners, if they haven't been to things like Anthropy or Blue Earth Summit or the Purpose Summit, for example, those things are really interesting. I strongly recommend go to them, because there's lots of interesting discussions and ideas being thrown about that are generally, I think, going to change things.
Excellent, thank you, Jon, and wonderful answer about the team. That was that was great. That was great. Thank you for that. Last question, Jon. Any news announcements you've got from Tilt at the moment you want to share with viewers?
I mean, what, shameless plug time, is it? I can do that. We just literally found out yesterday that we've won 2 Cannes corporate, so Cannes Film Festival. They have a kind of a corporate arm. So we've won 2 Dolphins, which is their kind of trophy. with them for our work with two of the major professional services firms. I can't say the names for NDA reasons, but they're two separate ones. So that's great. So there's going to be a fun little trip to Cannes to find out what we've won. And then another one is a gold at Brandon Hall Awards out in the US, which is great. That's an award for excellence, again, with a professional service firm. And then I guess personal news, not personal news, from a kind of a Tilt internal perspective, I spoke about the B Corp that we, which is great. We're coming up to a year now where we have to release our impact report of, have we held true to our initial kind of accreditation? What have we done to sort of move, continue pushing Tilt? And I think, I've been working closely with one of with our people and culture and office manager, who is kind of really sort of spearheading that, and it looks like we are going to become kind of officially carbon neutral by Christmas. That's the plan. We're on track with that at the moment, and she's in the process of building out and sort of breathing life into our net zero strategy, with our aim at the moment being 2025. And again, we're on track to that. Where there's 3 stages to a net zero strategy, and we're currently, hopefully by Christmas, we will have achieved 2 of those stages. The final one is the supply chain, in terms of you've got to basically bring everyone else who you use in terms of the provision of the office, your freelancers, everyone, into that same strategy, and that's going to be an interesting task. So, but if we can get there, it'll be a huge tick, which we'll be super proud of.
That is a massive challenge, isn't it? So it's okay when it's in your control, but when it's outside of your control, it becomes a slightly different challenge.
Yeah, it is. I mean, at the moment, obviously, it's still in its genesis. Generally, everyone's coming out and saying net zero strategy, but they're not there yet. But the more more businesses adopt it and embrace that strategy, the easier that third pillar will be to achieve, because you'll go into your supply chain, you'll have those conversations with your various people. And they'll be like, okay, yeah, I'm also on this journey and I'm this way through it. And so all of a sudden you're a lot closer to achieving that goal. And so hopefully, this is a path of ever increasing returns.
Excellent. And Jon, how should viewers connect with you? What's the best way to contact you?
For myself, if they want to sort of reach out to me directly, they can email me or connect with me on LinkedIn. Is a great one. But email is jon.malyon@wearetilt.com. And then I'm more than happy to have a conversation about anything. I mean, you should be able to find me on our website on the contact page as well. So wearetilt.com.
Well, thank you very much, Jon, for your time today, and thank you for the sharing. It's really been insightful, and I'm sure our viewers will have a lot to take away from that.
Okay.
And I wish you great success in the future.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you very much.
It's all good.